Hi guys, welcome to Bouncing Thoughts. My name is Crystal and my co-host for today's is Chris. Chris, say hi.
Hi.
Okay. Today's topic of combo is gonna be men's mental health or just mental health in general, but more geared towards men. So Chris is here to help me with that. Just to start, Chris, why do you think that men avoid seeking help with like their mental health issues?
I think from age, boys were taught to grow up earlier, especially with boys who don't have father figures in the household,
Oh yeah.
or not having like an actual physical father in the house, but you still have one. They're like, especially, I think it varies between like depending how many kids are in the house. I was one of boys, and my older brother definitely had to be the man of the house. And now getting older in age, like grown man, 30 years old, that I have seen fall ugly tears from just breaking down from any stress.
All that built up. Yeah,
from such a young age where you have to essentially repress all of your mental health and take care of and make sure that everything else is okay. But we forget to look inside and at the mirror of like oneself. So I think the biggest thing that you start them young and we forget to take care of, like, women take care of the family and cook and clean and get everybody all together and everything, but men like focus solely on everyone else and support and be the pillar of the household and
provider for sure, like that provider mentality.
And like little by little that pillar starts to chip away, and if you don't reflect, look back, heal from certain things, you can't be, over time it breaks down. So you need to make sure that you keep up with yourself, and because we have to be that pillar within our friendships, relationships, in life in general, like men are looked at upon with this stereotype that you are the strong person who doesn't let emotion affect you.
Do you think that it's stronger in like Hispanic culture? Because like I have a sister, but predominantly I grew up around boys. And a phrase that I remember hearing over and over as a kid was "men don't cry." Like if for whatever reason my brother or somebody else showed emotion, mainly crying, it was like, hey, like men don't cry, like sort of get over it, move on. And it's not that other cultures don't do it, but I think that in Hispanic cultures, especially that older male and the kids, like you said, just gets, it's kind of almost like they get parentified. I think that's the word. They're forced to grow up quick, and as a kid they're admired for it.
As much as I will say that the Black community as well has affected, personally, and maybe a little bit biased, that in the Hispanic culture, like you're talking about 12-year-olds already going to work with their dad, cutting lawn, painting, putting down tile, construction, anything. And like you said, that's looked good upon, and it's reinforced that that's what you have to be and everything. And you don't let them be a kid. You don't let them express themselves with any kind of expression. Another phrase that I always heard too, I mean, I was only with boys, but in general with like my friends and stuff like that, like one of my good friends, his dad, he would always say, "Do you want a reason to cry?" It was almost just like
it's invalidating.
It is invalidating. And he's Guatemalan, so Hispanic culture, like they themselves, older generation, and I mean he's like 50, 60 years old now, so he's a lot older. Like,
oh yeah, they're not doing it because they want to harm. They're doing it because that's what they were modeled, so that's what they think it's right.
exactly. And they themselves can't teach their kid or their son any other way that they only understand and know. So then that cycle just continues and continues until you always have that one son that is essentially not going to do the same cycle. And then it gets worse because now they're looked at as being rebellious or indifferent.
Sort of like the black sheep of the family.
Exactly. And then all you're doing is just shutting them down more. And depending on when you do it, especially as a younger kid, that really just sets them up for failure later in life when they can't even handle any emotional situations and have emotional immaturity growing up all the way until they're adult.
It's crazy. It's crazy how little things in childhood just affect you so strongly in adulthood. And the stigma, right? Because like women suffer with the same issues 100%, but women are looked at as the sensitive gender or the emotional gender. And I don't think that's true. I think that men are just as emotional as women. They just express it in different ways. And the stigma, I was watching a video kind of like preparing for this about a dad who his 14-year-old, I think it was, son killed himself. And the kid left a suicide note that said, "Tell my story." And the dad just spent a whole year trying to figure out what happened, right? And he says that he knows that it's not his fault, right? Like he didn't put the gun to the kid and make him take his life, but that he does feel responsible. And I think that this is something that a lot of people men, right, have taken their lives, because I don't know if you know this, but men kill themselves 2 to 3 times more than women. Like the suicide rate is just so much more prevalent in men.
Yeah.
And he says that when he thinks of himself and who he presented to as his kid, he presented himself as the man that if there was a problem, he fixed it. He says his kids never saw him cry. If he had a problem, he would try to, or a discussion with his wife, he would try to like keep it private, or like his kids just never knew about it. They went into like bankruptcy like 3 times. His kids never knew about it. So he was saying, and like I never really thought about it in that parent perspective, that he pretended, right? He put up this front for his kids because that's how he thought he was protecting them. Mm-hmm. And there was all good intention in his actions. But when his kids got to be adults, pre-adults, because that's what teenagers are, pre-adults, and started facing actual problems, he knew that they didn't feel comfortable coming to him because that's strong dad. Like, I can't tell him that I'm weak. Because in men, right, he's like, unconsciously, I taught my son that having these emotions was being weak. And I think that's a stigma that as Americans and many, many other cultures put on men. Like, don't cry because you're weak, or man up, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you have any problem, not only crying, like any problem, even at work, like if you have a problem, man up and deal with it.
Yeah. I definitely will say that men who are able to express their emotions, and like in the video you sent me with Lil Wayne, make that realization of that self-value of I need help. That takes courage and more strength than somebody who decides to be oblivious or act like nothing is wrong and they're going through, or kind of snap. Like, we as human beings, both male and female, we have emotions. We're supposed to feel our emotions, express our emotions, so then when they come up again, we know how to handle them. So it makes no sense as to shut them down, to not express, not feel it, to push them aside and keep moving as if nothing happened, or that's how things are to be. That's because you're a man and you're put up in this society. Like when you talked about 2 to 3 times more than women. Men, physically, literally, are stronger than women biologically. It goes the same thing with like men are more aggressive drivers. That's why you have to wait till 25 and your insurance goes down versus women, because men will take that risk. They will go into and do dumb stuff. As a little kid, as an adult, if you get to that point, all that buildup from childhood, from adulthood, not even childhood and everything else, and you see yourself in a mirror or sit yourself down or whatever, and you have a gun, a noose around your neck, everything, you already made it up to that point, and everything that you have been taught and learned is to be a man and suck it up and do it and go for it. Here we go.
Yeah, I hope that light bulb of this is not the way goes off. Unfortunately, a lot of times it doesn't. But.
It doesn't. Like, people who have experienced that are blessed and have those stories and are huge advocates towards male mental health in general should be and is being talked about it more, which is great. That's awesome. But it's still kind of like,
it's kind of like teeth outward, right? Like we say it, but the expectation that we have of our male community is not that. Like we're talking about it more, but we still want them to be these strong rocks.
Yeah, and not only
that have it together,
but it's still kind of like both male and women.
Yeah,
and like not sexist or any other way, but when you look at statistically, what we need to focus more on as a society is for the help. Women will come forward. They're not going to stop anytime soon.
Yeah.
Show their emotions.
I think we did genuinely as a gender took that power back.
Yeah. So men are the ones that need that outreach and that hand to be extended to really get out there. Of course, still focusing on women too, to have that availability. Another statistic, most shootings within schools or anything are male. And needless to say too, which it's controversy to what we were kind of talking about, it being more on the Hispanic, it's typically white men that go in and everything else, because they're also taught certain ways from their white parents with who grew up with guns and everything, and
the vulnerability is not there.
It's not, and it's almost like they don't have that switch sometimes to think about it.
Absolutely not.
Some shootings
they're stuck in a mindset and a period, and they can't see anything else.
They can't. And some shootings are completely random.
Yeah. But a lot of them are premeditated, unfortunately. There was just one in the Alabama New Year's Eve. I don't know anything about it, not yet. But on New Year's Eve, there was a mass shooting in a New Year's Eve party. I don't know. It was an event in Alabama.
You see?
I know. It's sad. And I don't know if you know that the Orlando Eye, there's a million stories, but one of the motors blew up and on New Year's Eve as well. And they shut it down because they thought it was on purpose. Someone purposely blew that up. And ever since then, it hasn't light up.
Isn't that terrible? That something that could be a and really fix with technology that we have, and of course the resources to keep that facility open, is a stigma that there's a possibility that this was acted, or intentional, premeditated, to everybody on there. That's that we have come to as a society, because being open at this time.
No, and I unfortunately think that for men, even when they do decide, right, if you have a good support system, yeah to you. But unfortunately, most people in this community that we live in, in this society, they don't have a great support system. And when they, as men, there was this example, when you walk into a room and you see a woman crying at a table, your immediate response is kind of be hey, are you okay? Blah, 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 blah. But if you walk into a room and you see this same scenario, same position, same everything, but a man crying on a table, like, humans' first instinct is to walk away, like to leave them alone. And I think it comes back to what you were saying with the shooters, that I think we know that it's built up, and we view men as these aggressive, kind of primal people, right? Like, oh, that's another saying that I heard all the time growing up: men will be men. No, like, men are gonna be what their environment and their life experiences have made them. Yeah, but it's sad because I think that I even unconsciously used to view, for example, my brother, like, once my dad died, he was the man of the house. Like, he was expected to be the one to bring food to the house. He was expected that if anything was missing, he had to replenish. But now looking back, like, my brother was a year and maybe a few months older than me. I was 16 when my dad passed away. He was also a child. But there was such a huge imbalance of what was expected of both of us when both of us lost a parent, you know? And I feel like another good example would be like the military. My brother being in the military. Once, and this is not only from my brother, this is from many people that I know in the military. If they go and seek help, they're punished for it. Not in the therapist's office, or not in like the administration side of the military, but everywhere else, being like their superiors or their peers, they get bullied, they get harassed, it's like one little problem just exploded for them because they're male and they wanted to seek help. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen for women, but disproportionately for male, it's just so much worse.
Not even that. When about support, I have in Pensacola, my living location right now. It's a military town, all the way through. There's a Navy base, there's a base.
They have the planes.
All of it.
Yeah.
Yes. Military. At least men in the military, even women too. They do it to other men and other women. They like belittle and put them down, or like laugh or about their insecurity. That's another thing. Like with in like sports, like other males, you have to act a certain way. You know, when it comes to being a like homosexual, like. Growing up, that was a huge thing. Oh, that's so gay.
Yes, you know? It was an insult.
It was
used as an insult. Yeah.
If men did anything, didn't matter if they were straight or not. If they were the quarterback dating the head cheerleader, the typical type. If he did something that was not of what a man is supposed to be, he was criticized. He was put down, and it wasn't just being put down by anyone. It was put down by the people that's closest to you.
Yeah.
Your friends, the ones supposed to have your back, and everything else. Same thing within the military. And then the other thing is the quiet ones within the military who feel for that person or understand them, or even the ones who are not so quiet and also are going through the same things. They're the loudest ones to get the attention off of them and put onto somebody else, so they're not like
a target.
A target, and the other person is, because they don't even know how to deal with it themselves.
Yep.
The help or rescue of that person. And that's just within anything. I've seen the most people I've seen cry when drunk, especially within the military, because they come straight out of boot camp and they're on the where I work, they're drinking,
yes, men are so much more criers when drunk than women.
All of them.
Yeah.
Stories, there's so
it's because it's that freedom to express, right?
Yeah. I love you so much. Oh, I've been dealing with this or this person.
Things that they would never do sober.
Nothing. these men, grown men, and in clubs and everything. I had a married man who was randomly just bald and everything else. Like, grown men, when they're past the point with liquor that gives them that freedom to just express themselves, they let it all out.
All out.
And
yeah.
the worst part about it is they wake up the next morning and act like nothing happened. Act like anything they didn't see.
And depending how drunk they were, they probably don't even remember.
Or choose, I think.
So that relief, right? That moment of relief doesn't even exist because you were so drunk that you don't remember that you had that moment of relief.
Exactly. I also think that, like, even if they do remember, they choose to not look or like it down. Like, it was just the alcohol.
It was a drunk moment.
And it's what's the saying? Like,
that drunks and children always tell the truth.
That's a good one. No, it's like drunk words are sober thoughts. For thoughts, because you have that thing that we have in our body that to say those things, you don't have control. All it is just that wall is down. You have no control. That wall is down when you're drunk because you're all free and feeling it, and everything just comes gushing out.
Continue.
And then when they wake up, which is another analogy too, between men and women talking about, is just putting on another mask when they wake up. The next morning, whatever happened, they'll laugh about it, or they'll try and make a joke about how drunk they were and what they said, to make fun of it, to diminish it, and then put on another face, keep going like nothing happened with the next day, and the next day, and another one, and another one. And at the end of the day, it's like, can you really...
You don't even know who you are.
Can you look at yourself in the mirror, know who you are, love who you are, and accept who you are?
Yeah.
Like, just stare at yourself in the mirror 5 minutes, maybe not even 5 minutes. Start off with a minute, just naked, no clothes. I think Adele did that for her weight loss journey, that she talked about it. Just stare at yourself in the...
It's super important, yeah.
Naked, in the nude. And
I agree. I practice it. I, as a big girl, definitely struggled with that earlier in life, and I think that for men, like, especially self-image, like, this is gonna be a little controversial, but I feel like even if you're an ugly girl and you're on Tinder, you'll get matches. Like, because unfortunately, men aren't on Tinder necessarily because they want a relationship, right? But if a man is not visually attractive enough, they'll go months without matches. Like, I've had so many of my friends just show me, like, when I compare my friends' male Tinders to my female friends' Tinders, it's crazy. The disproportion is crazy. And I feel like depression and mental health in men is almost like a direct attack to their masculinity because of what you just said. Because once they express whatever it is that they're going through, they're seen as, oh, that's so gay, or oh, that's so sissy, like a sissy. But I see homosexual men that are capable of expressing their emotions as powerful, right? Because I believe in masculine and feminine energy. And I feel like homosexual men unconsciously have mastered both, right? Even though, depending on who you are on the homosexual spectrum, you can either be more feminine or more masculine.
Yeah.
But typically speaking, homosexual men versus straight men are so much more willing to express how they feel and share whatever hard thing they went through, being bullied or grief or whatever it may be. And I see it as a superpower, but society and the world want to make it a flaw because it's an attack to what they view masculinity should be.
And then it goes to say another stereotype is like men like can't wear dresses. It's not masculine. But a woman wearing a suit and tie, there's nothing wrong with that. And it goes back and forth. We're not going to get too much into that one, but I view it as, like how you said, a masculine man being able to be feminine in a masculine empowerment. It's the same.
It's powerful. Mm-hmm.
Are feminine doing masculine things. You see, and you see these on all TikTok all day. The DIYs. You see,
Yeah.
you see moms or single women or whatever creating pantry, new kitchen, and everything else. Men love that. But if you see a guy doing something that isn't along those lines, I can't necessarily think of a good example.
Yeah, but they're almost categorized as like
Yeah.
being on this LGBT spectrum just because they're doing this.
Yeah, and then like there's like the exceptions, like, oh, he's a single dad or whatever. Okay, there are plenty of male single dads who don't do a single thing whatsoever, and
I agree.
make their daughters be more masculine. So there's both sides. But going back to talking about and men, like, I think it's become like something that we live with, that we have to do and go through on a daily basis, being depressed or like someone, and then
deal with it.
Yeah, and not do anything about it. It's just there.
Yeah.
It's away, and you're like,
and if you don't, then you're not like man enough.
Mm-hmm. And then if you deal with it, you're too feminine, you know, at that moment when you're dealing with it. And then they change their response when you come out of it because of the man that you've become. And like, okay, the man I became like this is how I became it. Not acknowledging it. It's going through it, expressing it, dealing with it. And then becoming who you're supposed to be.
Yeah, no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts.
There are no shortcuts with anything that you have to deal with. This is a tattoo that I want to get. Let it hurt, let it heal, let it go. And that goes with everything. Not just like health, but like physical, between relationships, friendships, intimate relationships, in life in general. Like, let it hurt. Your body, when it gets hurt, it sends pain signals to know that you're hurt. And then what happens? It heals. But anything that happens, heals. And then
that's also how the mind works.
Because at the end of the day, you forget about it. You know, like you remember a scar and you're like, yeah, I do have that. You know, you forget these things that just come up, or people ask you a question and you're just like, yeah, when I was like 8 years old, I fell off the counter or whatever. I was being dumb.
Because everything's temporary.
Everything's temporary. So why do we, as men, also have to hold all that in, or take women's or our kids or people or friends, be that macho guy that handles everything?
Yeah. And
then if we're not that macho guy, like, we're looked wrong. It's like we're not allowed to feel those things. You can't be that person. And that goes for like anyone in any situation. Yeah. Like the mental health. Oh, this person's always so happy and this, that, and everything. Oh, why aren't you like all giddy today? Like, something's wrong. Like, you don't usually act like that. It's like you're not
having a day
to feel that kind of way. And it's just like, I don't complain or talk about you.
Like, just listen to me and be there for me. You know, that's all you gotta do.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the saddest thing, is that it's as simple as just listen and be there. Stop being so selfish, between both male and female, towards one another, but male to male especially. Like, just listen. Just, hey, like, you gotta ask, what can I do for you? Not what can you do for them, because that's not what they're asking. That's not what they're telling you. They're expressing to you what they need, or just expressing. Sometimes, like, I call you a good handful of times and I'm like, you don't have to talk, just put me on mute. I just need to rant it out, let me get out of my system, and then by the end of the 20-minute self conversation that I've had, I look back at it, I'm just like, I'm really over exaggerating this.
Yeah. I don't feel as mad about it as I thought I was.
Have to release.
You have to let it out, yeah.
And
find someone safe to do it. Because definitely the wrong person will either put fire, like gas to the fire, or salt in the wound.
Either that, gas to the fire when they gaslight you, salt to the wound.
Or anybody that tries to dismiss you. Like, for that matter, because all you gotta do is listen to me. Even if you don't agree with what I'm saying, that's not what I'm here for, right? Whatever argument or situation is already teaching me whatever the fuck it's teaching me. So you're just here to make me not feel alone, make me not feel irrational, even if I am being irrational in the moment, because we are thinking human beings, and after the fact, you're gonna realize it. And you're just gonna be grateful that your friend was there for you. Yeah,
it's definitely, I think for anyone, me especially dealing with like anxiety and like my brain running out of miles an hour, which is another huge thing that men suffer from. And like they just put up a front that they got it all together, they got it made, and it's like, you know, underneath that surface they're freaking out and don't know what they're doing or what they're going through. But sometimes it's hard having all those thoughts in here and it's all over the place and you can't like figure where everything goes. You talk to,
and that's what anxiety is.
It clears things up, and it just benefits you so much when you just are able to express it. But I want to agree with you with finding somebody who you truly can trust, and that's the hardest part too. But also I want to add too, because you were talking about trusting that person and them not either gaslighting or putting salt on the wound, but also trusting that person to not use your vulnerability, your insecurity, anything else against you. Like that is just like, no, because then no matter what the situation is, it's mean-spirited and it was a decision that you made. Because like, you can get in a fight with anyone and fight about whatever the fight is without going for their throat with what you know, because of their vulnerability, is their soft spot or their weak point. And then with all that being said, we come full circle right around as to why do men not seek mental health? Because it as a society, it's not welcoming. It's not open arms. It's a challenge to find one person they fight in. It is. Like, some people have their thing, but I do think that even if you have that excellent relationship with your parent, there's still that like parent to child that there's not fulfillment there, and you know there's not, because it's just like, oh yeah, I talked to my mom about everything else, and then it's just like at the end of the day, like, who else do you have? Best friend? Do you have a significant other? Yeah, no, it takes a village, not like, only to raise a kid, to live. Yeah, like all men do nowadays is survive. Yeah, we don't live. We survive on a daily basis on the views that society puts in us, what our past society puts in us, what our family views puts in us, our friend group views, and like it's like we don't even get a break as to what view we have for ourselves and 100%. Where we want to be. And that brings me to that Lil Wayne video, and whoever hasn't watched it, it's by actual somebody on YouTube. I'll put the link somewhere in here. Watch it, because it's, to me, it really stood out what you just said. Lil Wayne, when he was 13, 14, shot himself in the chest. But when the interviewer is asking him, how did you know you had mental issues, right?
it wasn't the fact in his head. It wasn't the fact that he was having these thoughts. It wasn't the fact that he even grabbed the gun. It wasn't the fact that he felt like his mom wasn't letting him be who he was, because that's why he did it. He said it was because I pulled the trigger. It took him shooting himself, right? And it was like, obviously he didn't want to die because he had called the cops beforehand, before he shot himself, right? He wanted somebody to come save him. But it took him to shoot himself to realize that he had a problem. And I think that a lot of men get up to that point of having that gun, and maybe not a physical gun, but a metaphorical gun, to them, and because they didn't pull the trigger, they're like, oh, it was just a temporary thing, I passed it, I don't have to deal with it, move on, reset the next morning. And later on in the interviewer asked him, when as an adult did you feel like you weren't in a good mental health place? And he says that when his record deal wasn't allowing him to release his music, right? But if you compare the two circumstances, Lil Wayne at 13 and Lil Wayne at 32, 37, something like that. The little kid, his mom was like, no, you're not going to be a rapper. Like, get rid of that stuff, blah, 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 blah. And then as an adult, the label, in a way, doing exactly what his mom was doing, not permitting him to be who he was, to do what made him happy, because the mom thought it wasn't good for him, and the label, the whole legal stuff that they were going through. But I thought it was interesting that even though he shot himself and it obviously affected his life and changed his life forever, he never dealt with it. Because it was the same wound as an adult that made him feel like he wasn't in a good mental health place. And he went on this thing to speak because he wants to help people, and he realizes like the impact that it had in him. But I don't think they went enough into it in the interview. How we're bound to repeat our mistakes if we don't learn from them. And I think that men, let's think of like aggressive men, like those men that love getting in bar fights, and you know who I'm talking about.
Rage.
I feel like they are typically, at least from the ones that I've met, are typically really hurt kids. That the only thing they knew was to hurt others. And not because they're men, they're praised for it, right? Because if you punch someone the right way, it's like, hey, you beat that motherfucker up or whatever. And they really just want to cry and be held, right? Lil Wayne just wanted to be accepted by his mom, and as an adult, by the world.
They're lashing out because they don't know how to put it in, or not even words, just like action. Up for I mean, I agree with you 100%. It was the first thing that I said in the very beginning, that it genuinely starts as a kid. The phrase "the past repeats itself." The reason why the past repeats itself is because you have to learn from it. If you do the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome, how do you expect a different outcome doing the same thing over and over?
Right? That's the definition of insanity.
Exactly. The same outcome is going to happen if you keep doing the same thing over and
over again.
If you don't deal with the mental maturity, lack of and ability too, then you're always gonna not have that until you change something about it.
Yeah.
Like,
nobody's coming to save you. You gotta put in the work.
I think that's another thing too that men also lack, because like it can kind of be controversial or contradictive, because it's like no one is coming to save you, and we are taught that like you have to be a man to kind of grow up, but that doesn't mean you can't seek help.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's
you have to put in the work, but the support is needed as well. You need both.
You do need both, and you also need a balance. That's also most important, because if you have someone who is like not forced into like therapy or all this other stuff, but almost like forced into having that comfortability all the time and everything else. It's like you can't function on your own at that point too. You don't even know that what your mental health, your mental, what your
yeah,
mental,
the lack of awareness.
yeah, because it's just like you've had always someone do that first step, and then after that first step, oh, I know what to do from here. I got it.
It's
But
like a crutch.
yeah, it's like, can you take that first step on your own when the situation presents itself? Because that's another thing. Like in any relationship, whether it be an intimate one or a friendship, right? Women go through it. 8 months later, they're better to a year. They still remember the guy, or guys that remember the girl, or the guys and the guys and the girls, all that, right? They still remember it. Guys, the next day, 2 weeks later, or the next day or 2 weeks later, perfectly fine, like nothing.
Yeah, they act first, feel second.
Yes, and it's like, how can you tell me you're okay when your partner of 3 years, like, you broke up with them or they broke up with you?
It's denial.
Denial. It's 100% denial. But like women, so men will get into the gym the very next day. And my ex, he did this.
Because they're about action.
Yeah. But not only that, my ex, stuff happened to him his past. He was young. All he did was physically make himself bigger. But when it came to his mental capacity, he was much more codependent. And I was young. And he depended on me so much to be this male that, was good and had it all and knew what I was doing. And my first relationship, nonetheless, and all that other stuff. And I was just like, it was draining. It was exhausting. And at a point, it just ended.
It's a negative feedback loop. It's like confirming what you want to hear.
So, but women, you see women go through all that, and mentally, they're great. They are over them. They get through it. It might take them longer.
They feel first, action after.
And then afterwards, you see these women, you see them a year or two later, or social media or whatever, and then they're in the gym, they're losing all this weight, they do this, and, we don't see it often, but, like, there are some men who, like, the girl leaves him or the guy leaves him, and they do that weight loss journey and get down to shape and do all that. But you see it more often, women.
But they're usually bitter.
Yeah. And after, 6 months or whatever, and a lot of them, like, I'd say probably 60 to 70 will tell you, a friend, a family member, or a significant, they had to deal with it, they struggled, they cried themselves to sleep, all this other stuff, and once they got through it, they're soaring. They're going up.
I feel like that, and I'm gonna wrap it after this just because we're running out of time, but I feel like that goes in hand, in my opinion, with why men's suicide rate is so much higher. Because when you act first and feel after, you're prolonging, right? You're making a feeling last way longer than it should, and that's why it feels like you can't escape, right? When you deal with the grief of that relationship, right? Because when you break up with someone or lose someone, it's grief, right? It's not like death grief, but it's grief. You're dealing with it first, and eventually you can see that there's a way out. There's like that light at the end of the tunnel. But if you keep postponing it, 6 months, a year, 2 years pass, and you're still stuck on the idea, it feels endless. And everything's temporary. But because of that action, which is what society teaches, unfortunately, males to do, it's never going to feel temporary. Because something that probably should have affected you, depending what it is, a few months, a year, whatever, is now affecting you 5, 10, 15 years. This is why some men, when that glimpse of us song came out, and they were all like, oh yeah, the one girl that got away, or the one girl that I would drop everything to be with, and they were like married men of whatever. Like, it's because they never dealt with it. They probably went through this breakup, got married to the next person almost immediately. The poor new girl has no idea. She because they don't talk about it. And it was just a random thought, but men's health. I'm here to fight for it. I think that I help or try my best to be an open person to all my male friends, homosexual, non-homosexual, even trans men. And nobody's alone. Nobody's perfect. But speak up. If you get a negative response, you're probably not the problem. Try someone else. Now, you tried, 20 people and they're all kind of telling you the same thing. Maybe look within. Look in the mirror. But for me, being mentally healthy is simple. Your mind, words, and feelings have to match. If your mind, feelings, and words don't match, you're probably going to feel discomfort and a war within yourself. But any last thoughts? Thank you for coming. I love talking with you, and I love your insight from a male perspective.
Anytime. I enjoy talking with you, and it being a very open-ended conversation and not like attacking kind of deal. And I mean, sometimes some conversations can be productive when you're like, what about this? I just think personally, the last thought I just wanted to say to there is to express what you feel.
Well, thank you. I'm going to end it here. Thank you for coming to Bouncing Thoughts, and you'll see this soon online, okay?
Good, I'm glad.
I love you.